Hey there, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we are going to pierce right through the heavy shadows of history to unpack something absolutely fascinating: the mystical, psychological, and esoteric dimensions of sacrifice. It's one of humanity's most ancient, universal practices. And as we're going to see, the physical altar, well, that's really just the starting point of a much, much deeper journey.
Picture this. We're starting way back in the primal shadows of antiquity. If you look at ancient mythologies, like the Epic of Gilgamesh, they painted a pretty visceral, honestly terrifying picture of the heavens. They literally described the divine as eagerly swarming the physical scent of blood offerings, kind of like flies. For early humans, the divine was an entity that actually needed to be fed.
So here's our map for today, the Chronicles of the Sacred Rite. We're going to cover the ancient altars of blood, the psychology of the offering, the esoteric paradigm shift, manifest and metaphysical realms, slaughtering the lower ego, and finally, piety and ultimate submission. Let's jump right in.
Section 1. The Ancient Altars of Blood, Primal Shadows, and Sacred Communion.
Let's look at that ancient world for a second, where physical destruction was seen as the only way to appease the heavens. Early anthropologists, like James George Frazer, had this theory that sacrifice started out as a dark, almost magical practice. They believed a king or chief held this sacred power, right? A life force called mana. But as that leader grew old, the mana faded, which put the whole tribe in danger. So they believed they had to perform a ritual slaying to basically recharge that power. They were using a substitute victim to carry away all the community's weakness and decay.
Now, another scholar, William Robertson Smith, looked at this and saw something totally different. He saw it as a physical communion. The idea was that by consuming a sacred, theanthropic animal, basically an animal that acted as a physical bridge between the earthly and the divine, a clan forged this incredibly profound, blood-bound unity between themselves and their god. They were literally joining the realms of the sacred and the profane through flesh.
And just look closely at the Vedic priests here acting as intermediaries. As these rituals evolved over time, you couldn't just have anyone walk up and perform the rite. No way. These priests had to undergo some incredibly severe, purifying initiations. They basically had to completely detach themselves from the everyday, profane world just to safely cross over into the sacred realm, because they were bearing the massive weight of the entire community's offering.
Section 2. The Psychology of the Offering, the Burden of Guilt.
So what is really going on beneath the physical stones of that altar? Well, Sigmund Freud actually dove right into this psychological shadow. He framed the whole ritual as a reenactment of a primal parricide, tied right back to the Oedipus complex. In Freud's view, the primal horde slays the father figure. So the ritual slaughter we see repeated across history is this deeply conflicted psychological mechanism. On one hand, it expresses a dark, primeval violence, but on the other, a profound remorse. It's early humanity trying desperately to purge this crushing collective guilt and seek some kind of ultimate reconciliation by using a substitute victim.
Section 3. The Esoteric Paradigm Shift Beyond the Physical Blood.
All right, this is where things get really fascinating. As we move away from classical interpretations, we have to look at the unseen spiritual energies of the rite. Classical occultists genuinely believed that blood inherently held divine power. They thought that just spilling it automatically released this surge of energy. But the esoteric truth completely flips the script. Esoteric scholars argue that the energy invoked doesn't come from the physical blood at all. It stems directly from human consciousness. It's the psychological weight of the cruelty enacted, the dark intent, the internal state of the people participating. That is what actually calls forth the energy.
And that realization changes absolutely everything. It tells us that the blood on the stones was essentially an illusion, a highly visceral symbol meant to wake us up to one piercing question. If the flesh perishes and the blood dries, what actually ascends to the heavens?
Section 4. Manifest and Metaphysical Realms, the Dual Nature of the Rite.
To answer that question, especially when we look at the Islamic tradition of Qurban, we have to split the concept into two realities. You've got the Zahiri, the manifest realm. This is the external social action, fulfilling legal obligations, beautiful acts of social charity, feeding the impoverished. But right alongside it exists the metaphysic realm. This is the hidden internal truth, where a principle of cosmic sympathia is at play. It's the idea that a lower cosmic order, the animal kingdom, substitutes for a higher one, humanity. This acts as a spiritual shield to deflect negative earthly energies and purify the soul. They aren't in conflict. The physical act grounds the metaphysical reality.
To really wrap our heads around this metaphysical side, the great mystic Ibn Arabi drops an incredible perspective on the Prophet Abraham's famous test.
Ibn Arabi suggests this wasn't just some test of blind obedience. It was a profound test of spiritual knowledge, of interpreting divine allegory. Abraham saw a vision in a dream, right? But he mistakenly tried to execute that metaphysical dream on the physical plane. The divine intervention that stopped him proved that the true sacrifice was always meant to be spiritual, in allegory, not literal human bloodshed.
Section 5. Slaughtering the lower ego, the mystical ascension. And that brings us to the ultimate esoteric realization. In the mystical Sufi tradition, the physical offering of an animal is just a grand allegory for slaughtering what's known as the nafs, the ego. It's not about an altar of stone. The true altar is in the mind, and the true victim is the self. It's basically a sacred staircase. You start out at nafsi MRI, which is that commanding, greedy, selfish lower ego. Through the sacrifice of those base desires, you wake up your conscience at nafsi lavame. And you keep climbing, shedding those attachments, until you reach nafsi mutmaineh, the tranquil soul, and ultimately nafsi kamile, the perfected soul, totally surrendered and bathed in divine light.
Section 6. Piety and ultimate submission, the core of true worship.
So by sacrificing our worldly attachments on that internal altar, we finally hit the absolute pinnacle of the sacred rite. The sacred texts actually confirm this ancient secret point blank. Chapter 22, verse 37 of the Quran says clearly, "Their meat will not reach Allah, nor will their blood. What reaches him is piety, taqwa, from you." The physical act is literally just a vehicle for that internal state of reverence and purity.
Which leads us to teslimiyet, absolute unwavering submission. This is the very heart of the matter. True sacrifice is evolving past the physical cruelty of ancient rites and moving into internal spiritual purification. It's about letting go of excessive desires, dropping the ego's need to control everything, and acknowledging that earthly trials are just reflections of divine will. It's that quiet, profound surrender of our earthly anchors.
The great mystic Rumi hit the nail on the head when he said that the life of this world is nothing but a dream. He pointed out that seeking wealth and status here is like finding treasure in a dream. When we desperately cling to those things, we're basically fighting over imaginary loot. Clinging to the physical world is the real illusion.
So, as those ancient shadows of primal altars clear away and only the divine light is left, we have to ask ourselves a profoundly personal question. When you finally wake up from the heavy dream of this physical world, what attachments of your ego will you have willingly left upon the altar of your soul? It's something to really think about as you navigate your own journey. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it sparked your curiosity to look a little deeper into these ancient traditions. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.